right, good. There are only half the people now to actually hear me fail, which is what I'm going to talk about, right? Back in 2008, spring, I received a link in an email. This has probably happened to just about everybody in this room. It was a link to a TED Talk. A boy from Malawi, 14 years old, built a windmill that he'd seen the layout in a book and used it to provide electricity as a run a radio in his parents' home. Had dreams of building a larger windmill to bring more electricity to his village. And I had that moment that probably many of you have had while watching a TED Talk, and that is, what am I doing with my life? You know, I was in grad school at the time and writing a lot of poems, and I just thought, well, boy, it's changing the world. You know, like, oh, great, you know, I have this body of work that no one will ever read. But, you know, Alex then says, hey, we're doing this thing called TEDx. And I thought, well, here's my opportunity. You know, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to transform lives. I'm going to shape minds. You know, my words will be so powerful that stars will be born in like distant galaxies. And so then I racked my brain, okay, now for the ideas that will actually make all these things happen. And you know that sound and that I don't know, sensation of when you walk into a room and you flip the light switch and no light comes on, but you can actually hear the bulb, the filament like snapping. That's what happened in my head. It's just like, I got nothing. And so I decided to talk about failure. And what that means is that I get to stand up here and parrot old ideas. So I'm this brown-haired, pink-skinned parrot wearing a necktie. And let's see if this works. Okay. So I'm going to parrot old ideas, and I realized that this talk could also be called Learning to Love Failure, a Comedy. So hold that in your head. Well, so connecting old ideas, I promise you that all I'm going to do is repeat things that you already know so that when we get to the end, you'll think, wow, he really didn't disappoint. Okay, anyway, and we're back. I guess I'm supposed to focus the laser on the screen. Anyway, so old ideas, right? And as I was thinking about this today, I thought, oh, boots. So I realized tonight I'm going to be talking about boots. Now, these boots in particular were developed, I think, 1911. You might have heard of them. It's the Maine hunting shoe, also known as the Bean boot. Now, a man named Leon Wood Bean, an unfortunate name by most respects, grew up in Maine, loved the outdoors, and I guess he thought, wow, outdoorsmen really need a way to keep their feet warm and dry. And so he developed this boot. And I'm going to put them up here so that you can see them. Anyway, 1912 does his first production of these things, right? So that's 100 years ago. And if you want to talk about the staying power of ideas, I mean, that's pretty good. 100 years, right? And the thing is, I've had boots with Gore-Tex. I've had boots with a knockoff of Gore-Tex called Sympatex. I've had all these different boots, you know. You wax them, you put all these like petrochemical sprays on them, and guess what? They still leak. And you know, these still work, right? You know, you can wear them in a river, you can wear them in the snow. Old ideas with staying power. So I'm actually going to make maybe a contrarian assertion tonight, and that is technology doesn't necessarily make us better, okay? If you read the rest of this article from Wendell Berry, he would talk about how he doesn't think that technology has produced more better writers, okay? And he said, you know, I have this wonderful relationship with my wife where she actually types out my work, she interacts with it, she helps me improve it. Why do I need a computer? Because I will lose that very sweet interaction with my wife. Not to say that computers don't help, and like obviously healthcare and clean drinking water, and all these amazing innovations, right? Ideas that spread. All these ideas have spread, and so you have a kid in Malawi making a windmill because he had a book. You know, that's an idea that spread, and wow, what a difference it made. But does Wendell have a point here? And I would say he does. I would say that time hasn't necessarily improved boots. And it hasn't necessarily improved writers. Word processors don't necessarily make better writers. Does Photoshop make better photographers? Does Illustrator make better designers? These are questions worth asking. If not technology, then what, right? Time. Okay? You probably have read this book. Again, I'm just parroting other people's ideas. Malcolm Gladwell, he's the guy in the middle, borrowed from the work of K. Anders Ericsson, who his life's work has been the study of expertise. Whatever you care about, it could be thoughtful correspondence, it could be permaculture, it could be lean manufacturing techniques. Whatever you care about, how long, you know, like what do you have to do to become an expert, right? 10,000 hours. That's what it takes. And now that's the term that Gladwell coined, but it's actually liberating. And if we're going to talk about human potential tonight, we're going to actually talking about, you know, using lean methodology to free up time in your life. You know, what are you going to do with that time, right? That's what you got. Expertise. Right there in a little square. 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, 50 weeks a year. I figured everyone could use 2 weeks of vacation. 10 years. All right, if you change any of the first 3, you have to change the 4th. Okay? We are a society obsessed with shortcuts, obsessed with convenience. Now, all my friends, bear with me. Has anyone heard of the Forever Lazy? Like, this thing is a joke. You thought the Snuggie was bad? Okay, this thing, you're going to have to get a little bit graphic here, okay? This thing has what they call zippered hatches. And has it really come to this, okay, where I need to save the 7 seconds it would take me to undo my belt and drop my pants? Now, thank goodness, this fleece onesie enables me to use the restroom without, you know, really even having to use an opposable thumb, right? You could just, boy, that's progress, you know? We're obsessed with convenience. We're obsessed with shortcuts, right? And that doesn't make us better, you know? All these newfangled zippered hatches, they don't make us better. So what do you spend your time doing, right? If it takes 10 years and zippered hatches aren't actually going to free up that time, you know, 3 hours a day is a lot of time. That's a sacrifice, right? That's a word that you don't hear very often when it comes to potential sacrifice. That's what it takes. What do you spend that time doing? Failing. Okay? And I know this isn't a new idea, but failure is not something that people like to talk about. This is something I'd like to say. It's something I've learned in my, you know, relatively short life. Failure is not the byproduct of success. Success is the byproduct of failure. Practice is simply failing in a particular direction, okay? Now, if I had been more of a designer, I would have made a wavy line, or I don't know if you ever saw that YouTube video of Miss America actually stumbling and falling down the steps. I mean, I remember watching Miss America pageants with all my cousins growing up, and, you know, we're just sitting there praying that someone would fall. Please let someone fall. Warped sense of humor in my family, but, you know, I probably should have played that video and said, like, isn't that what we're all afraid of? Like public humiliation. I don't know how many of you follow Seth Godin, but his blog post today was about how we all have all these negative feelings associated with failure. So we avoid failure at all costs because we feel a certain way when things don't go right. That's why people fear public speaking, is because they're going to get up and humiliate themselves in front of an audience, a live audience. Everyone's going to walk out that door thinking, that guy was an idiot, And that takes us all the way back to middle school where we're all trying really hard to be cool. Because it takes a lot more courage to fail in a particular direction than to be cool and to hide behind the job description, right? What if you take this big risk, you take initiative, and then you fail, and then you're the one who loses your job because you actually had the guts to think outside of the status quo, to challenge the status quo, to say, hey, maybe rather than, this is a job I had, this is dumb, okay? Maybe rather than buy Dean and DeLuca whoopie pies and send those as gifts to our clients, I was like, hey, my grandmother has this pumpkin bread recipe, and I could just make pumpkin bread out of all organic ingredients, and then we could donate the money to Young Williams Animal Shelter and Child and Family Tennessee, and then, it took me 12 hours to bake all that bread. And you get into trouble, right? If you take initiative, you could fail, or you don't have as much time to do the things that you care about, to go out drinking with your friends, or to sit on the couch watching. We've been watching a lot of Mad Men. You don't have as much time to think, I'm so much better than Don Draper, my gosh. I'm glad I'm not Don Draper. Public humiliation, right? That's the thing that the fear of failure motivates and drives us so much. Its effect on us is profound to the degree where we don't even realize that it's that fear of failure that actually motivates us. We think, we're after success. But I believe that so often we're afraid of failure. The last part is the part that's most important. The dot is in the wrong place. Fail better. Fail in a particular direction and fail better. Don't try to avoid failure. Learn from your mistakes and fail better. Okay, so we see other people's successes, right? We see all the ways, that they have seized by the very power of their will, the things that we want for ourselves. Athletic prowess, billions of dollars, millions of dollars, this acclaimed recording career. Who doesn't know about the Beatles, right? T.S. Lewis is one of my favorite poets, and I guess some of you in here may hate him. He's so modernist, oh my gosh. But anyway, how many words did he write? His whole thing is, I write from 9 to 1 p.m. every day, and he was at one time a publisher and later, or a banker, and then later a publisher. But that was his rhythm. He wrote 3 hours a day. That's 4. I was an English major, don't worry about it. I hired my sister to be my accountant. But anyway, how many words did he throw away? How many words did we never see? How many songs did we never hear that the Beatles played and they're just that was terrible? And I should get you up here to do the impression. I'm not going to try to do the impression of one of the Beatles talking because that would just fall flat. Kind of like this presentation. But how much money did Richard Branson lose, right? There are people who speculate that he's actually lost more money than he has made, and he's a billionaire, right? And this is a guy who talks with relish, with gusto about failing. Living a life of significance. Could I have put something more cliche, right? But who here wants to look back on a life of half-finished projects? I don't. And when I used to wake up in this cold sweat at night to think, what if I just wake up and I'm at the end of my life and I realize I've done nothing? Nothing. I don't want that to happen. And so, what do? If you walk away, I thought about printing this out on little cards so that you'd actually have something to take away tonight. you could put in your wallet or in your purse or in your satchel or in your fanny pack or whatever it is that you carry around. You could carry it away and you could take it out or you could pin it above your desk. Because I really do believe if you believe in this, and then you're that much closer to potential. Now, that means something different for everybody, doesn't it? I mean, because I'm thinking about what projects do you care about? Because my list is very, very different than your list. But I didn't get to print these out. Okay, Edison, right? He's like the icon that everyone holds up for persistence. You know, 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. The only point I want to draw from this is who can tell me the name of the reporter? The one who loves to offer that little jab. You spent a lot of time failing, Mr. Edison. What do you have to say for yourself? This was his success rate, okay? Now, Edison didn't even create the light bulb. I mean, I guess that's, Americans like to believe that we created everything. He didn't create the light bulb. His genius was creating an integrated lighting system. So what makes this number even more significant is the fact that he then had to move on to the next component in his integrated lighting system. So he finally found that carbonized bamboo filament that actually worked. I think it burned for maybe 14 hours. Finally found it, and that was only one piece in this system that was supposed to give us, electrical lighting. And so I don't care that he invented the light bulb. If he hadn't done that, somebody else would have. Somebody else already did, and he had a reputation for buying the patents off poor men, and then he'd put his name on everything. But failure. So I decided to change the way I think about my life. Sometimes get emotional when I talk. I'd rather try all these things and fail at them. I specifically asked for this not to happen. I would rather try to do all these things and fail miserably at them than to hide behind some, warped idea of perfectionism. I'd rather dance with my wife and make an utter fool of myself and see her face light up because I swallowed my own fears and put her above my fears rather than subscribe to this idea that failure is a byproduct of success, which is false. So, this is the question, right? What's in it for me? I think she left. But what's it, with them? That's my generation, I guess. What's in it for me? And you said this earlier when you were talking about, hey, start a little garden, and guess what? Side effect, pleasure, right? It makes you happy. Something about eating a tomato that you've grown makes you happy. I don't know if you've ever read this poem, Shout Joy. One word in it she repeats over and over again like a mantra. Yeah! There is a mentor of mine who always does that, and it scares the crap out of me. So that was my turn. My turn. Back in 2002, I studied abroad, and my parents said, don't do anything stupid. And I'm like, what a dumb thing to say to a kid who's going to Western Europe, and they can't get their hands on me, right? So I went skydiving in Interlaken, Switzerland, over the Alps, and I got a little certificate. And I'm like, oh, great, I'll just turn this into a postcard. It was like saying that I had skydived, right? And so I sent it home to my parents. I was like, you can't be mad because I'm not dead. But I'm sure I'll reap that when we have kids. But anyway, first of all, the feeling of, how fast do falling objects fall? I mean, that's how fast I was falling, right? And my voice was hoarse when my feet touched the ground because I realized I'd been yelling the whole time and didn't realize that I'd been yelling. But man, when my feet touched the ground, and my best friend, we met when we were 4, we were both riding on the bottom of our mom's grocery carts. And I looked over at Hunter, and he was alive too. So we had successfully jumped out of a plane 13,000 feet above the mountains, and we had survived. And like that's one of the best feelings I've ever had. You know, that's joy, consummate. You get to share that experience with someone you love. You've survived. You've done something that scared you. I mean, I want to look back on a life of feeling like that. So that's what's at stake. So, Leon Wood Bean bought a mailing list of non-resident hunters who had hunted in Maine. You know, created his advertisement, mailed it out. First production, 90% of the people who bought the boots sent them back. They're like, I don't know what you say, you know, but maybe they leaked. But he stood by his money-back guarantee, which L.L. Bean still has, and he gave them all their money back. And he made another boot. Then he made another boot. And 100 years later, I'm talking about these silly boots, right? But what I'm really talking about is the art of finishing. I'm talking about learning to love failure. I'm talking about leading a joyful life because you aren't eaten up with fear. Thanks.